I always feel nervous doing these, even though I've done them like so many times now. But yeah, so as Dee said, I'm Remie, and I wasn't heckling at the radio show actually. She was asking me questions and I was answering the questions. But yeah, I'm Remie, I'm 25, and when I was on the show with Mum, my mum is a counsellor, I don't know if she's been introduced yet already, and she was talking about young people and what it's like to support young people and the different things that young people go through. And at the time I had been home from uni about a year, 2 years? I think about a year, and I had come home from university, or I had been rescued from university because I was in a very severe domestic abuse situation. It started when I was about 17 or 18, and I think, like most people, I think we all have a basic knowledge of domestic abuse, but you never feel like it's going to be you that it happens to, especially being that young. At school, we'd had lessons where they tell you, obviously, these are the signs you've got to look out for, and this is what it's going to be like, and it's all just very matter of fact, and it's only one thing, and it's going to happen that way. So when it was happening to me, it didn't feel like it was happening to me because it doesn't happen exactly how you think it's going to happen. So it started off very little things for me. He would check my phone, and obviously being like 18, I hadn't really been in a relationship before that, so I didn't know that that probably was a red flag at the time, but he would check my phone, and then it got to the point where he would then take my phone for like periods of time. And again, to me, it didn't feel right, but it also didn't feel like the worst thing that had ever happened to me, because domestic abuse, in the name, you think abuse. Obviously, it's the first hit, that's when it starts, like that's it, that's abuse. But so it didn't feel like anything, and even speaking to my friends at the time, they were like, oh, well, he's just looking at your phone, that can't be too bad. And I was like, yeah, obviously, that can't be that bad. And then it escalated a little bit to, he would check where I was all the time, or I would go out with my friends and he would be outside the club, or he would be waiting at the train station just because he was also going out. But again, it felt wrong, but it didn't feel like the worst thing in the world, because I was like, oh, this is just my boyfriend and he just wants to know where I am because he wants me to be safe, you know? That's what it was to me at the time. And it kind of escalated a little bit like that, and it got annoying to me, is what it felt like. It was annoying. I was like, I don't want you to be checking where I am all the time. I'm a Sagittarius, so I was like, freedom, leave me alone, that's all I want. So I broke up with him, and then it kind of escalated even more, and that's when it sort of felt like this is not a good situation for me to be in. But I didn't know how to get out of this, and nobody else knew how to get me out of it because I was so young. So I broke up with him, and that's when I went to university, and I was like, yeah, this is me, I'm gonna go off and I'm just gonna live my best life, and I'm just gonna like become an adult, and I'll know how to like navigate everything because I'll be so smart. Everyone says once you get to an adult, you know everything, and obviously that year between 18 and 19, I was meant to just know the world inside out. I was like, yeah, cool. So I went to university, did my first year at university, still in contact with him. He would come up and see me, and when he was with me, he was with me. I couldn't go anywhere, I couldn't do anything. It then was like every day he had to FaceTime me in the evenings. Then it escalated to he had to FaceTime me all day because he had to know where I was at all times. Unless I was in a lecture, I had to be on the phone to him. But being at university, I already had my own mental health struggles at the time, so it felt like I had someone who wanted to check up on me and wanted to know how I was. It didn't feel like he was just keeping me in my place. It didn't feel like that, because when you're at university, in itself is a struggle. I don't know if anyone's been to university or anyone has a child at university or anything. University is hard. You're literally a freshly new adult thrown into this place where you have to then cook for yourself, do everything for yourself, make sure you've got enough money to live, pay your rent, everything, and you've literally come from your mum's house. Like, I don't know if you know how to do that, because I didn't know how to do that. So having someone there was like, oh, okay, I have someone with me. But I still had my own independence at that point because he wasn't at university with me until the next year, which was a shock. I think when I went back in the September, I had found a house with my friend at university and we were all ready to settle in. Got to the September and my landlord called me and said, oh, you've got a new tenant on your in your house. Is that okay? And I didn't think anything of it, because why would you think anything of that? I was like, okay, yeah, just another person at my university. And my mum took me and we opened the door and he was like, hiya, how are you? I was like, oh, how have you found my house? You're in my house. So I didn't know what I was meant to do at that point. No one I knew had been through anything like this, so I didn't know who I was meant to speak to, who I was meant to talk to. My landlord had told me this was happening, so I was like, okay, I guess so. I mean, what else do you do in that moment? You've literally paid your rent already, like, you're locked into this house. He's also locked into this house with you. So I was like, do you know what? I can do this. Like, I'll be fine. This will be fine. And goodness me, was it not fine at all. Within a week it had started, he was like, he wouldn't let me sleep. It was constant all night. He had to either be talking to me or shouting at me, and he would shout at me for like 8 to 9 hours, and that in itself is exhausting. Not being like having to go to uni at like 9 in the morning, and then you come home and from like 3 in the afternoon you're then shouted at all night until about 3, 4 in the morning, to which point he then goes, you can sleep now if you want to. But he would watch me sleep. He would stay in, and in this house we all had our own rooms, but obviously what's a room? Upstairs and downstairs, not he could come down the stairs. So he would then watch me sleep. He would take my money. He always said he never had any money, but you've got money, so if you give me some of your money, I'll give you back when I have money. And maybe I was a bit naive at the time, but I was like, I don't want anyone to not have food. I don't want anyone to be in a worse off situation than me. We might as well just be level. Like, if I've got less money, then you could have less money as well, and we can do it together. Because again, university is not the nicest experience ever, and I didn't want anyone to be in a position where they were worse off than I was. So it started off with little bits where I would like make him dinner. If I was making dinner, I'd make him dinner, and then that turned into, you have to make me dinner. Where he was taking my money, I then had no money for myself, so I had to get a job. So then at that point I was like at university from 9 till 3, I would then do a shift 3 till 10, and then he would then shout at me from 10 till 6 in the morning. And it would just go like that all the time, consistently. And it then escalated to, he had to pick what I was wearing every day. We were in the house together, he would then take my phone for months at a time. I couldn't contact anyone, because to him, I didn't need to talk to anyone else, because there wasn't anyone else that needed to know what I was doing or where I was. My mum was a problem, because if I was talking to my mum, then someone else was involved. So he would tell me, like, my mum is she doesn't want me to have any independence. She doesn't want me to, like, fly the nest. So I couldn't speak to my mum. I couldn't speak to my siblings, my friends. And then when I thought like that was the worst it could be, I was like, yeah, okay, it can't get much worse than this now, surely. It then upped, and it then became physical abuse. Where I already had bad mental health, I was already self-harming myself. But it would then escalate to, within these arguments, which are not arguments because he was just him shouting at me, he would then pick up a knife or scissors, and he would be like, so you can cut this this part of your leg or this part of your arm. And then it would escalate to he would then cut my legs and my arms, and he would then, I think at that point where I was just so, my mental health was so bad, I was so like inside myself. I didn't feel like a real person at all. I was very like uni, work, home, but home wasn't safe, so it never felt like I had any time to rest, ever. So I just kind of not allowed it to happen, because you never allow abuse to happen. That's not what that is. And if you've never been through it, that might be what it looks like from the outside, but for someone who's been through it, that is not what it is. You are not allowing this person to violate you at all. You don't have a way out of this. There is no way to get this person to stop doing this to you, especially when you're in a situation where you have nowhere to go. I was in Leeds at university. A train ticket home was like £70. I didn't have £70 to come home. I also didn't have a phone to call my mum to get me home, because he had my phone. He had all of my ways to contact people. So it kind of then, in your head, you try and work out a way to protect yourself. And my way of protecting myself was that this is okay for now, because at some point I'll get out of it, but this is okay for now. So that continued, where he would be harming me, and where I then kind of disassociated from everything, because I had to kind of protect myself, because it was awful. I mean, I don't know if anyone has been through something like that, but having like 12 hours of your day taken up by someone relentlessly telling you you're stupid, you're nothing, you're ugly, you're disgusting, you deserve to be cut, you deserve to be hurt, like no one else is going to love you, so why would you go for anyone else? You would have to stay with me because no one is going to take you now. I then just kind of disassociated from everything, and I just was not very aware of my surroundings, which is then when the sexual abuse started. I would wake up in the middle of the night and he would be on top of me, and he was like, well, you must have enjoyed it because you didn't say no. And I didn't say no because I was sleeping. I didn't say no because if I said no, what else would have happened? What would I have done in that situation if I had have said no? And that went on for 2 years. We were together for 4 years, but the intense abuse was for 2 full years, and that is 2 years of my life that I will never get back, ever. It's 2 years of my life where I was in fight or flight mode 24/7. I would pick up extra shifts at work because it meant that I wasn't at home. I remember at one point, my job put out an application and he applied for it. And I remember he did his like tester shift with me. And I thought, you cannot be serious that this is now like another thing that I don't get to myself. I didn't have my university because he was in my university. I didn't have my home because he was in my home. And then I didn't have work because he was then in my work. Like, he was from back home, so anytime I went home, he was then in my house, like all the time. And I remember it didn't start to get too much. It had already been too much at this point. But I remember I said to my university, I said, what is domestic abuse? What does that look like? What can it show itself as? And I was in counselling at the time because my mental health was so bad, and I think everyone had just thought it was my mental health. I know my mum thought it was my mental health. So I was in counselling, and she was like, oh, well, you know, if they hit you, that's domestic abuse. If they tell you like what to wear and what to do, that's domestic abuse. And I said, okay, so I think I'm in that situation. I feel like my partner is controlling me all the time. And then she was like, no, though, because you're only 20, you're only young, so that couldn't happen to you. She was like, are you sure you know that's happening? And I was like, well, I'm living it every day. I know what happens to me every day. she was like, I just don't think you do, because you're only young. It wouldn't happen to a young person, so I don't think it's happened to you. So I left it, and then I had weekly sessions, and every week I kept bringing it up, and I would say, I really think that I'm in a bad situation, that I need some help. And every single week she would say, no, you're fine, like, you're young. This doesn't happen to a young person, like, don't be so silly, Remie, that is not what is happening. So I then started to doubt myself, because I was like, okay, so if someone of authority to me is telling me that this is not happening, who am I to say that it's not happening? I was like, I know it's happening to me, but they're telling me it's not happening, so surely it's not happening. And other things that he would do was he would like ring my friends and put them on speakerphone, and he would say, like, you know that Remie's ugly, don't you? So if you tell her she's ugly, then she'll start to realise it a bit more. And when you're put up against a wall by someone who is not a nice person, of course they're going to say, well, she's not ugly, she's not, no, like, because how do you answer that? If someone says that to you and is like hounding you down the phone to tell someone that they're ugly, what would you say? That's a situation that you've probably never been in, so how are you meant to react to that? Or he would say things like, don't you think Remie should try to look better in the house for, like, just for herself? And then it would be like, for me, do you not think she could look better? And that's a very open-ended question. Well, yeah, you could look better in the house, couldn't you? You could also not, it doesn't make a difference, it's your house. But again, when someone then replies, well, yeah, they could, she also couldn't, he can then take whatever answer he wants from that, and then he can put that on me every single day, and it would carry on like that all the time. So I had my authority at university telling me, that's not happening, you're so young, you don't even know what that is, you don't even know what love is, you don't even know what abuse is. I then had him then telling me, this is the only thing you're ever gonna have for the rest of your life, because no one wants you now, you're disgusting. He was like, the things that I do to you at night, the things that I do to your body, no one's gonna want you. If you tell anyone that, what are they gonna say? I then had my friends who were like, I don't even know what's going on, but I'm getting these phone calls from this boy telling me that you're acting this way. It was relentless, because he had told people here in Luton that I was a horrible person and all these things that I'd done. So when I came home from Luton, came home to Luton, I never felt safe. He had all of his friends at the time, if I was in Luton, if I was out, they would all come up to me, like in the club, like 5, 6, 7 boys shouting at me, telling me that I'm disgusting, that I'm nasty, that I don't belong in this club, like no one wants me here anyway, so I might as well go home. And I can't even explain what that feels like, to be somewhere where you finally feel like you've just got a moment to yourself, just to like do nothing, you know, just like get out of your head. Then having all these people come up to you and being like, you're disgusting, you're nasty, like it's horrible. To then go home, to then have that happen to you again for hours and hours and hours, like, it was the worst 4 years of my life, but they're 4 years that I would never change, because I learned so much in those years, and I feel like I've become a better person after those 4 years. I don't think abuse and stuff like that is a necessary thing to happen to someone to make them who they are, but for me, I feel like, of course, to become who I am now, I would have 100% preferred not to have gone through that, you know. If I could have taken that away, yeah, I would have. But as horrible as that was, coming out of it, the things that I've learned and the things that I've been able to do are so amazing. And I think as a young person, I just want to give that back to young people, because I don't think enough people, young and old people, know about what is out there for young people. I came home one Easter. I came home for Easter, and it just all escalated so quickly. Within about 12 hours, I had come home. I put a picture up on my Snapchat, and he went insane. I was out with my friends. On a night out, and I think I was out from about 6 till like 2 in the morning, say. And from about 6:30, he had called me about 200 times. He had texted me about 500 times. Where are you? Come home. You need to come home now. I need to talk to you. He was like, even if you come home, you know you're not going to make it back out of this because you are disgusting. Like, you as a person are awful. And I showed my friends because I thought, you know what, this is awful. I was like, what am I meant to do in this moment? Like, I can't even get onto my phone because the texts and the calls were just coming through. I can't even answer them. The amount that you're sending me, I can't get to. So I just showed my friends. I was like, what would you do? Like, what would you do? And they were like, has this been happening for a while? And I was like, this has been 4 years. This has been happening. Like, and they were like, this is the same person that would call us and say these things to us. And I was like, yeah. And obviously he hadn't said exactly what he would say to me, to them. So they hadn't seen the severity of it. And in that moment, I think everyone just went into like survival mode for me. They were like, this is not going to continue. They took my phone off me, made sure I got home safe that night, and I think someone gave my phone to my mum or left my phone where my mum could hear my phone. And he had called me in the morning and FaceTimed me, and he was shouting at me. Like, it was horrific. He was shouting at me, and he basically said, like, once you get back to university, just know that this is it for you. Like, you're, I think, was I 21? No. Yeah, no, I was 20. And he was like, your life will end at 20, like this, that's it for you. Like, you don't think about any more of your life because there isn't any more of it. Once you get back to university, that's it. And my mum heard it, and she came in and took the phone, and she was like, you're not going back to university. And at the time, that was like the best thing I'd ever heard in my life. I was like, oh my God, yay, I don't have to go back to that. Like, I don't have to go back and have to survive every day. Like, I can just relax, maybe like have a day where I could have a nap, you know, and not have someone watching me have a nap. I could go a day where someone's not gonna, I mean, trigger warning, I don't know. Do we have to do trigger warnings? We should do trigger warnings. But a day where I'm not gonna be raped, a day where I can just do something for myself. But at the same time, where everyone puts such importance on university, I was like, I'll never finish. I'll never be able to finish my university. Like, I'll never be able to get this done. But my mum, she is amazing, and she had contacted my university and explained everything that was happening. And it was not smooth sailing because they did not get it at first. They were like, what do you mean that she's being abused? And my mum was like, she has been telling you this, but none of you have been listening. But they let me finish university from home. Because I did photography, it meant that I didn't get anywhere near the grades that I should have got because I didn't have the equipment because I was at home, and there was no way I was going back up there to go and get any equipment. But I did. I finished my university degree from home, and I have felt prouder since then, but in that moment I had never felt more proud of myself ever. Because I just think years of survival and having to make sure that I was okay got me to that point where I then had a degree and I'd done it, and I did feel like I was behind my whole class and everything, but I then also thought, you know what, no one else has gone through this, so no one else can actually tell me what it's like to get to this point. And after finishing my university degree, we then went into lockdown, about a year after. So I then fell what I thought was into an even deeper depression, because it kind of just felt like, again, I was stuck. I was like, oh my God, I'm back in the place where I can't leave my house, I can't do anything. So I spoke to my GP and he was like, yeah, you don't have depression, Remie, you've got PTSD. You are struggling with trauma and your trauma response is to now panic. You are panicking because you now feel like you're back in the same situation, even though you're not, you're with your family, but being told that you can only go for one walk a day and you can only like see one person, I was like, oh my God, this is like the same as him telling me that I can't do anything. So I had my diagnosis of PTSD and it did feel like, I was like, oh, another thing. Like, again, I'm now put at a disadvantage to everyone else. But my mum and all my family were like, this isn't like it for you, like PTSD is not like the end now, like there are things that you can do, and they were pushing me, and when they were doing it I was like, leave me alone, honestly, like could you just leave me alone, like I don't even feel like a real person. Like I went through 8 months of my life where I didn't feel real, and it felt like, I don't know if anyone's seen The Truman Show, I felt like I was walking through life and I was like, there are people watching me and like this is just not real at all. I would go to work and I was like, oh my God, like am I really here? Like I don't even know what I'm doing, like this is so bizarre. And then one day I just kind of clicked back in. It was at work actually, and I like kind of just came back to it and I was like, well, I'm a real person and I need to like do something now, because if I don't, what he said is going to be right, and my life will be over at 20, or I was 21 at that point, and I thought, yeah, if I don't do something soon, I am just not going to get past 21, because I'm literally, every day I was like, I would wake up and I think, right, how do you think you could like end it today? How do you think this would work today? Because nothing else seems real. The only way that you're going to get out of this is just to end it. Like, what else are you going to do? Because you don't even know what's going on day to day. So that's it. And once I got to that point, I then was put on really strong antidepressants, which I've always said I'm a strong supporter of antidepressants. If you need them, take them, because they are so helpful. They're just like a little helping hand. You shouldn't feel scared of any medication or anything like that. If that's what you need at that point, go for it. But they were so strong for me that they like completely knocked me out. They were like sedatives, because I was having like night terrors every night. Like I couldn't sleep. So I think for about a year and a half I could like count the hours of sleep I had on my hand. I couldn't walk around because I was so scared he was going to be there. Like anyone who even looked remotely like him, I would then freeze in the middle of the street. I would just be stood still for like 20 minutes because I couldn't move, because I was so fearful that he was like coming for me. So I was on these antidepressants and they would just knocked me out. Even mum was like, this is just like, I couldn't like talk properly, I couldn't focus on anything. So I said, I've got to do something else. So I looked into different organisations that supported women who had gone through domestic abuse, and lots of them were only centred towards adults. And I was like, I am an adult, yeah, because I'm 21, but this didn't happen when I was an adult. This didn't happen, the majority of this happened when I was a child. Like, how is there nothing for young people? Like, there's nothing to support young people. And I was like, I am not the only person who's gone through this as a young person at all. So I got in touch with Stepping Stones. I was put in contact with Stepping Stones through my IDVA, which if you were in that situation, oh my God, go and get yourself an IDVA. It's a domestic abuse, it's like a social worker basically for you. They contact you, they make sure you're safe, like they give you a care plan, an emergency escape plan if you need one. And I'd never known about them before, and when I got in contact with them, I was like, wow, like someone's gonna look out for me, like there's someone who wants to make sure that I'm safe. That's crazy, because they don't even know me. And they put me through to Stepping Stones, and through Stepping Stones I have done multiple group therapies and singular therapies. I've gone through counselling, I'm still waiting for some trauma counselling, but through those groups I have learned so much about like domestic abuse, and obviously being in it, I know a lot about it because I've been in it, but hearing and learning about what it is that person is going through to put you through what you're going through, and why you can't get out of these situations, because it's not your, yes, it's your abuse, you were going through that, but it's not yours. This is not you that is doing that to yourself. Someone else is doing this to you. It's like being in school. You can't just leave a lesson. You can't just leave that school and have no consequences for that happening. So it's the same. I couldn't just leave that and then nothing else was going to come from that if I just walked away. And I feel like as well, people don't understand like the amount of times I tried to run away. Like in itself, I would run to the train station, to the coach station in Leeds. Like I could not get away from that. And learning that is not my fault took so much off my shoulders. Learning about like trauma attachments and the fact that for a long time after, I did feel like he was the only person I could go back to because he was the only person that wanted me. That's a trauma attachment, and I never knew that before that. So these groups were amazing for me. I learned so much in them. However, I was always the youngest. I was always the youngest in the room. Everyone else was like married and had kids, and I couldn't relate to that because I didn't have a child, and I wasn't married, and I didn't escape a marriage where I was stuck in a house and I couldn't get out of that. But that didn't mean that my trauma was any less than anyone else's, but sometimes it felt like that. Like, they were like, oh, but you don't know because you don't have kids, so you don't know what it's like to get your kids out of that, and you don't know what it's like to try and go through a divorce with someone who still wants to, like, harm you. I was like, no, I don't know what that's like, but I do know what it's like to be me and have someone turn up at my house, and even in Luton, I know what it's like to be stuck in a house where I am paying the bills and I can't get out of it. Before I'd gone on the radio show, I had decided in my head that I had to make a difference to this situation, because I know I'm not the only person who has gone through this at a young age, and I know there are so many people in Luton alone, let alone the whole of the UK, who are going through situations like this where they cannot get out and they don't feel like they're supported by anyone because they're a young person. And I have worked with Deez, and I've worked with Stepping Stones, and I've written 2 books. I'm trying still. It's hard because I have to think of myself first and my mental health. I have to make sure that I'm in a good place, but I'm trying to make it so that these services and these amazing learning experiences are available to young people, because they're needed. Like, what we learn in school and PSHE is like that much compared to the whole thing that is domestic abuse. It's not just being hit. That's awful. But so is being told that you're disgusting relentlessly every day for 8 hours. So is being cut. So is being chased down the road when you're trying to escape something. So is having your money taken off you. All of it is awful. None of it is less than anything, you know? And I don't want another young person to be told, well, you're too young to know what that is. When you know yourself what you're going through every day is not right, you know that that is not a nice feeling. You shouldn't be told that, well, you're only young, because what difference does 20 and 21 make? What difference does 21 and 22 make? It's only a year. How much more do you know than I know? You know, like I've spoken to people, adults who are like, I don't even know how to live my life, and they're in their 30s and 40s. I'm like, so neither do I. I don't know what I'm doing. So your age and my age makes absolutely no difference, you know? I've spoken to young people who are like 13, 14 who know way more than I do. So why are they let down because they're so young compared to someone who's an adult? But yeah, I mean, I think I've spoken for too long.
Thank you for all what you said. I work as a midwife, and every day I'm asking that question. And number one, I would really like to know, how was that person that said to you wasn't abused? Were they, were they spoken to? And so that was one thing I got to do. What happened to the bloke? Because you know your family. Is it Clare's law? Because should be, his name should be in the system. That's any girl. Because as I said, what we've changed now, it takes 25 times for me to keep asking my women before they will disclose if they're being abused. So, and one the other thing I'm going to say, I'm so sorry for, not sorry, but I'm just so, I've got my daughter here, she was in uni, and I'm telling you, I'm just so glad that she's home safe now, and I don't know what I would have done if she had gone through what your daughter had gone through. So, but please, any time, let you know that, for young people, that let them know the word of abuse, because that teacher or whoever that counsellor should be spoken to, because it makes, and you should be on that law, you should be on that register.
So after I left university, we had put in quite a few complaints about how they handled it. When I went back for my graduation, my lecturer did pull me aside, and she did say, we have taken measures to speak to that counsellor and speak to other people and educate our staff team on how to actually support young people, because as they said to us, they'd never experienced this before, and not that you should have to experience something like that to know how to handle that, but they had never experienced it before, much like lots of other people had never experienced something like that before. So they have now put in better measures to support young people. In terms of him, I, at the time, didn't want to do anything like police-wise about it. I just didn't feel like I was in the right headspace myself to do that. I also didn't, maybe stupidly, many people have told me that it's stupid since, I just didn't want to put him in a position where he was then reprimanded for this. I wanted him to learn from this, because yeah, he could be arrested, they could go and take him, put him in jail, whatever. Doesn't necessarily mean he's going to learn anything from that. He could come out of jail and still go and do that to someone. Doesn't make a difference. And maybe he should have gone to prison, maybe that should have happened, but I feel like he now is able to learn from this and knows how to treat someone better than how he treated me, and knows not to do that to someone else, because as what I want to do for young people is put in for myself, like people like me who are going through the abuse, but for young people who feel like they have the red flags that would put them off as an abuser, because they do show up very young as well. Like, his parents were abusive and stuff like that, so there were things before that he would have seen and other people would have seen that they should have then pulled up. And I think that, for me, like, everyone used to say, oh, it's revenge, go and get him, like, we can go and beat him up, we can go and do what he did to you. But to me, that doesn't make a difference.
He
That's not
probably
going to do
did
anything to
counselling
me.
as well.
Exactly. If he has counselling, if he goes through stuff and he learns how to be a better person and learns how to not do this to someone, that will be better off for the whole of society, I think.
I also think that what you explain there is that he's showing the signs of a narcissist, and that is a narcissistic personality disorder, which means he's not going to learn. So what we need to understand is a personality disorder is what shapes our behaviours, it's our actions, and that cannot be, that cycle won't change for anybody. So it won't change for you, it won't change for the next person, because it is a personality disorder. So they're not capable of love, they're not capable of empathy, they're not capable of compassion. They don't actually know what that feels like. They know what passion feels like, they know what euphoria feels like, but not actually what love feels like. So I get what you're saying there, and I like the idea that you like to think that he will change, and that's a good sign of you as a person. But there is some around he's a narcissist, he's never going to change.
How is he going to change?
Which I then have learnt through my own counselling and stuff like that. I have learnt that he is like that, and I have now put in, through the police, I have put in a report about him. So that's fine. But he still has to learn about being a narcissist and what that means for him in his life. But
His journey.
yeah.
Well done.
And then
So what you were talking about reminds me of when I went to college myself. So I went to a girls' school in Hackney, and then I went to a slightly more middle class school that was in Gospel Oak, so in Camden. And there was an instance where I was with a group of girls, and she suddenly got, because I never went to all girls' school, and I suddenly was in a mixed school, completely new friends. And it reminds me of a girl in my friendship group of her boyfriend. He used to be just like that. I knew it was off, and we actually fell out as friends because I was trying to think, who is this dude? Because I'm from Hackney, I'm just going to clap you like, this cannot be right. And he does it. He just kind of came into our friendship group. He was just always there.
Yeah.
Because I had a second friend, and long story short, was domestic abuse. Her brother found out she was dating someone, broke her toe, made her wear her hijab to school, and then she decided to go through a women's refuge. And by the time we got to exams, me and some other girls got pulled up because we knew that she was out of school, but we never ever, we also were the few minority girls in the majority white school, and I don't think they really knew how to deal with the situation. So when they did pull us up, we didn't really want to disclose too much what was going on. I mean, she got herself out of the situation because by the time it got to exams and we used to give her the notes, she was in a women's refuge. She just somehow got off the situation, and at the age of 18 she was in a women's refuge, and when it came, she used to be escorted to exams. And it does, because that's like a nice middle class area where you think, oh, it's so much better than wherever.
Happens everywhere.
And to me, that school was just like opened my eyes to everything. So yeah, it does. It actually starts a lot younger, but like you said, it's that feeling is, my mum and dad don't behave like that, so that's not right. But it's wrong because you can start to see the really bad behaviours, and it's quite worrying with the cost of living crisis. Does that mean that people start living together younger or whatever, and these things are going to be, it's already there, but even worse?
Yeah, I mean, they are worse, not just the cost of living crisis. Lockdown, the numbers skyrocketed. I work at a hospital, and I had so many people come in to me basically saying, like, I need a safe place to stay because I can't be at home. But in terms of young people, I lost lots of friends because of it, because they all after said, I knew that was happening, but like, what could I have done about it? And at the time, it did feel a bit like, gosh, like, don't just say that. Like, everyone has just said that to me. But it's not like that. You should never feel bad. If you know someone is going through something, realistically, what can you do? You are not God, you're not a saviour. You can't just go in and pick someone up all the time. Like, it doesn't just work like that. Like, thank God that my mum was able to help me, but that's how she could help me. She couldn't do much more than that. And I say this to my friends all the time, like, because they all feel bad. They're like, we could have done more, we could have said more. And I'm like, but you couldn't. Realistically, you could not have he was already fighting me, he was cutting me, he was doing whatever he was doing to me. He would have just gone and done that to you if you'd have got in his way. So what difference would it have made? You shouldn't feel bad about not being able to go and pick someone up and take them out, because we'd all love to go and do that, but you can't, like, that is just not physically possible for everyone. Like, you know, I'd love to go and pick up everyone in a war zone, but I can't go myself and go and pick everyone up out of a war zone because I can't fight a bullet. Do you know what I mean? You can't fight that abusive person. You can help the person who's going through the abuse in any way you can, but it doesn't mean that you yourself can take them out of that abuse, and you should never feel bad about that, because it isn't yours to take away.
No, you can't, because it's really weird when you're a friend on the outside and you're young, because at the time when teachers did pull us up about this, but then you're kind of saying, well, she's not married to the person, so what can you say? There's no evidence necessarily that he was hitting her, but there was enough evidence that there was some form of
coercion, something's not.
Control, and you don't even know how to verbalise it at 17, because that's what happened with your mum and dad, and you have children. Not when you're 17, you're meant to be trying to live your best life. Exactly. So it's not easy.
As you can tell, this is a topic that could be continued and should be spoken about. So for those of you that are here and that have listened to Remie and thought, wow, she's spoken for a long time, it's so important that the young people have a voice and we give them those platforms.
One of the platforms that we've got coming up is a youth event that we're putting on, that I'm putting on. We just got funding from so that would be a big part of it.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
Give her another round of applause.